My dad killed my mom, so I destroyed him in every way possible. 2 years later, he's trying to convince me to let him back in because he's changed. My mom was the type of person to apologize for running into a pigeon on the sidewalk. People would describe her as a woman who could be their fairy godmother. Meanwhile, my dad was the wicked witch of the West. I was 7 years old when I figured out how to lie that I had brushed my teeth when I didn't. I'd wet my toothbrush, put a dab of toothpaste on my tongue, and run the tap water for good measure. But after 2 days in a row of this, my dad finally caught me. Except he didn't punish me, but I wish he did, because instead, he punished my mother. He dragged her up the stairs into the bedroom, and her eyes were closed shut super tight like she knew what was coming. "Why the F didn't you raise our son to be better?" he asked, with his hand already lifted in the air. "I'm sorry." Her apology was cut off with a blow of my dad's hand to her face. I tried to cover my eyes so I wouldn't have to keep watching, but when I realized it made my dad hit her even harder, I was forced to watch until he finished. When he walked out of the room, my mom whispered, "I'll get us out of this, don't worry," before kissing my forehead and going to bed with my dad. Another time, my dad caught my mom eating a slice of chocolate cake after dinner. "Is that mine?" "Wait, I didn't know. Here, I can bake you a new one right now," she tried to beg, but it was too late. Next thing I knew, my dad was carrying me from the couch to the kitchen and grabbed the black leather strap that still haunts my dreams. "Don't blame me, son. This is because of your mother," is all he said before bending me over and hitting my behind 5 times. He then sat down on the couch and watched as the Green Bay Packers lost another game. I locked eyes with my mom, and I could see her silently pleading for me to forgive her. And at the time, I hated her. Not because I believed the BS my dad said of his punishments being her fault, but because in my eyes, she wasn't keeping her promise. The one she said about getting us out of this mess. To me, it seemed like she was just letting it happen. I spent the next few years on my best behavior. Got all A's, came home straight after school, always cleaned up after myself. It was like a full-time job. So much so that I didn't even let myself have any friends, because I knew if they did something wrong, then my dad might use it as an excuse to hit my mom, and my mom did her best too. With this unspoken agreement, I was only getting hit once a month, while my mom was getting hit a few times a year. Life was sweet, I guess. We were all in the car when my dad got a call from my English teacher. When he picked it up, he put it on speaker so we could all hear it. "Your son was caught with a nicotine pen today. He is going to be suspended." I furrowed my eyebrows, because I had never even seen a nicotine pen before, let alone hit one. My dad hung up the phone. "I should have never effing married your sorry My dad was screaming his head off. Adrenaline filled my body, and the car started going at 135 miles per hour. The road was empty, and my dad swerved right into a tree. My ears were ringing so loudly it hurt my head. I woke up hours later in a blue hospital bed to the sound of CNN playing on the TV. The nurses surrounded me, but they didn't seem worried, just pitiful. Turns out my mom didn't make it, because even though the airbag was activated, her body was so small and skinny that it ended up crushing her spine and calling her. But I didn't even have time to grieve, because that's when my fat dad strolled in, perfectly intact, with a huge smile on his face. "How's my boy doing?" he yelled, slapping his hand across my back a little too hard. I tensed up really hard. "So funny story, son. Your teacher just called and told me that you weren't the one caught with the pen. They had gotten you mixed up with another student." I stared at him blankly. That's when the nurse told him he had to leave because there were a few tests they had to run. As soon as the curtain closed, the nurse bent down super close to my ear. "Were you that woman's son?" she asked, voice shaking. I nodded, and her face turned ghost white. "Are you sure?" I nodded again. She asked me how old I thought my mom was. "Like 35, I answered, my head still hazy from the painkillers. "Your mother is 24, she answered. My jaw dropped so wide I thought my bone was about to crack, because my dad was 40, and, well, you do the math. Suddenly it all made sense. Why my mom never got us out of the mess. Why I had never met any other family members. I wanted my dad dead. They discharged me from the hospital 2 days later. I went back to a house that looked exactly the same, but everything felt different now. The couch was still brown. The TV was still too loud, but mom's slippers weren't by the door anymore. Her coffee mug wasn't on the counter. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the vanilla extract she used in everything. Everything that made this place feel like home was gone. My dad started acting weird right away. He made pancakes the first morning, chocolate chip ones. He never cooked before. They were burnt on the bottom and raw in the middle, but he stood there watching me eat every bite. He bought me 3 new video games and a PlayStation controller. He kept talking about starting over and how we were going to be okay, just us men. His smile never reached his eyes. I nodded along because what else could I do? I was 14 and had nowhere to go. I started writing everything down in a notebook I hid under my mattress. Every date, every quote, every time he raised his voice. I don't know why I started doing it. Maybe because I needed proof that this was all real, that I wasn't going crazy. The pages filled up faster than I expected. One night I was pretending to sleep on the couch when I heard him on the phone. He was in the kitchen talking low, but I could still hear him. He said something about papers and how she was never supposed to find out. My heart started racing. After he went to bed, I snuck into his office. The floorboards creaked under my feet, each sound making me freeze in terror. There was this drawer with a lock on it. I remembered seeing Mom use a bobby pin once to open my diary when I lost the key. It took me 20 minutes, but I got it open. Inside were old papers, school transcripts from some state 3 hours away, a birth certificate with a different name for my mom, and this old journal page with an address written on the back. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped everything. I took pictures with my phone and put everything back exactly how I found it. The next day, I told my dad I was sick and couldn't go to school. He barely looked at me, just grunted and left for work. As soon as his car was gone, I looked up bus routes to that address. It took 3 buses and 4 hours, but I made it. The house was small and run down, paint peeling off the sides, weeds everywhere. I knocked and this woman answered, maybe mid-40s. She took one look at me and gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth and she started shaking. She asked who I was, but I think she already knew. I told her my name and that my mom just died. She broke down crying right there in the doorway. She pulled me inside and made me sit down. Her hands were still shaking when she poured me water. She told me she was my mom's older sister. I had an aunt this whole time and never knew. She said my mom got pregnant at 14. My dad was her teacher. He took her out of school and they disappeared. The family tried to find them, but my dad was good at covering tracks. They filed missing person reports, but nothing came of it. I begged her to help me, to let me stay with her, to call the police, to do something, but she just shook her head. She said if my dad found out she was alive, he'd come after her too. She gave me $40 for the bus and told me to be careful. That was it. My own aunt was too scared to help me. me. On the bus ride back, I noticed this kid from school, Vincent. He was 2 seats behind me trying to act like he wasn't watching. We'd never really talked before, so it was weird seeing him there. I got off 2 stops early and walked the rest of the way home. Sure enough, I saw him get off at my regular stop and look around confused. I started paying more attention to Vincent after that. He was always around. At the water fountain when I got drinks, pretending to tie his shoe or check his phone. Outside the bathroom when I came out, suddenly very interested in the bulletin board that hadn't changed all year. Even at the grocery store when my dad sent me to buy milk, browsing the cereal aisle like a kid who'd never seen Lucky Charms before. It was too much to be coincidence. One day I confronted him in the hallway. The late afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, making everything look golden and safe, which felt like a lie. Asked him straight up why he was following me. He turned red, his acne-scarred cheeks flushing darker, and stammered something about just wanting to be friends. His voice cracked on the word friends, like he was still going through puberty. I didn't buy it, but I played along. Started sitting with him at lunch, watching him pick at his sandwich with nervous fingers, helping him with math homework, which he was genuinely terrible at, acting like we were buddies while my skin crawled with the knowledge that he was reporting everything back to my dad. It didn't take long to figure out what was going on. Vincent let it slip that my dad had been giving him rides home, buying him stuff, new sneakers, a phone case, even paid for his lunch sometimes. All Vincent had to do was keep an eye on me and report back. My own dad was using a 15-year-old to spy on me. The kid was desperate for approval, for someone to notice him, and my dad had zeroed in on that weakness like a predator sensing prey. I kept hanging out with Vincent though. Better to know who was watching than not. Plus, I had an idea forming. If my dad wanted information, I could control what he got. I started feeding Vincent harmless details, complained about teachers, talked about video games I didn't actually play, made up stories about crushes on girls in my class, watched his eager face as he memorized every word to report back. I started recording everything on my phone, not obvious stuff, just leaving it on record in my pocket when my dad was around. The quality wasn't great, muffled and scratchy, but you could make out the words. Got him talking about mom sometimes, asked innocent questions about how they met, where she grew up, what her favorite food was. He'd get this look in his eyes, distant and possessive, and change the subject. But sometimes he'd slip up, say things like she was too young to understand, or that he saved her from a bad situation. Once he said she would have ended up on the streets without him, then caught himself and glared at me like I'd tricked him. The recordings were hard to listen to later. His voice made my skin crawl. The way he'd say, "your mother," like he owned the words, owned her memory. But I kept doing it, building up evidence. For what? I didn't know yet. I just knew I needed it. Each recording was another brick in a wall I was building between us. My dad was getting weirder. He'd stand in my doorway at night just watching me sleep. I'd pretend I didn't notice, but it was terrifying. I could hear his breathing, heavy and deliberate, could smell the beer and cigarettes on him. Sometimes he'd stand there for 10 minutes, 20, just watching. I'd lie perfectly still, counting my breaths, waiting for him to leave. He started going through my stuff when I was at school. I could tell because things would be slightly moved, my books rearranged, my clothes refolded differently, my desk drawer not quite closed all the way. I started leaving traps, a hair across my closet door, pencil shavings arranged just so on my desk. They were always disturbed when I got home. My notebook was safe though. I'd started keeping it in my locker, wrapped in an old gym shirt so it looked like forgotten PE clothes. One day I came home and he was in my room, just sitting on my bed, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for a job interview. The afternoon light made his face look waxy and unreal. He asked me about the bus ride, where I went, who I talked to. His voice was calm, but his knuckles were white. I lied and said I went to the mall with some kids from school, gave him names of people I barely knew. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. His jaw twitched the way it did when he was holding back rage. That night, he put a lock on the outside of my door, a heavy padlock from the hardware store, said it was for my safety, to keep intruders out. We both knew the only intruder he was worried about was me trying to leave. I texted Vincent that night from the old iPod I'd hidden in my mattress, told him I was feeling really sick, like throwing up sick, asked if he could come over and help me with homework. He said yes right away. Probably thought it would score him points with my dad. I could practically see him rushing to get ready, eager to please. While Vincent was in my room, awkwardly explaining algebra I already understood, I grabbed his phone. He'd left it on my desk while he went to the bathroom. His password was his birthday. I'd watched him type it a dozen times. I opened his messages and sent one to my dad. Made it look like Vincent was snitching on me. Said I'd been talking about running away, that I'd stolen money from my dad's wallet, that I'd been asking about bus schedules to other cities. None of it was true, but my dad wouldn't know that. He'd just see betrayal, deception, his worst fears confirmed. 20 minutes later, my dad burst through the door. His face was purple with rage, veins standing out on his forehead like worms under his skin. He had the leather strap in his hand, the one with the metal buckle that left marks for weeks. Vincent went white and started stammering, his words tumbling over each other as he tried to explain. I just sat there calm as could be, my math textbook still open in front of me. Let my dad raise his hand. The strap whistled through the air. Then I looked him straight in the eye and told him to go ahead. Told him I'd been recording everything, that copies were already sent to people who'd care. Something in my face must have scared him. Maybe he saw Mom in that moment, the way she'd looked at the end. He lowered his hand slowly, the strap dropping to his side like a dead snake, told Vincent to get out. The kid practically ran, leaving his backpack behind. Then my dad left too. Slammed the door so hard the walls shook and my pencil cup fell over, but he didn't hit me. That was new. That was power shifting. The next morning I woke up early, before the sun was fully up. The house was quiet in that heavy way that meant my dad had hammered himself unconscious. I took down every picture of Mom in the house. There weren't many. He'd destroyed most of them over the years in various rages, but I grabbed them all. Her high school photo from the fake documents, the wedding picture where she looked like a dressed up child, one from the hospital after I was born where her eyes were already empty, put them in an envelope with copies of the documents I'd found, added a USB drive with some of the recordings, mailed it to my aunt with a note written in my neatest handwriting, told her about the recordings, about what my dad did, about the locks and the watching and the way he talked about Mom like she was property, begged her one more time to help, said I was scared, said I needed family, said please. My dad noticed the missing pictures right away. He tore through the house looking for them, throwing cushions off the couch, emptying drawers onto the floor, accused me of trying to erase her, of being ungrateful, of being just like her, always taking taking things that weren't mine. I just shrugged and went to school, stepping over the mess he'd made. When I got home that afternoon, he was hammered. Empty beer cans covered the coffee table like aluminum tombstones. The TV was on but muted, casting flickering shadows on his face. He started getting paranoid after that. Thought I was plotting against him. He wasn't wrong, but he didn't have proof. He took my phone, smashed it with a hammer in front of me, ripped the Wi-Fi router out of the wall, the plastic cracking as he yanked it free, cut the cord on the house phone with kitchen scissors, leaving the frayed ends hanging like nerve endings. But I'd already backed up everything to my friend Harold's email. Harold's dad was a lawyer, not a fancy one, just did divorces and custody battles and stuff. But Harold said he might be able to help, said his dad had seen cases like this before. Things got bad fast. My dad stopped going to work, just sat around drinking and muttering to himself. He'd rant about my mom for hours, how she tricked him, how she pretended to love him, how I was just like her, always lying, always sneaking around, always planning to leave. The house started to smell like unwashed clothes and rotting food. Dishes piled up until we ran out of clean ones. Trash overflowed from the cans. Flies buzzed around the kitchen. I started eating at school, stealing extra food when I could, hiding granola bars in my backpack. One night he lost it completely, started throwing things, broke the mirror in the hallway. 7 years of bad luck raining down in silver shards. Threw a bottle at my head but missed. Glass shattered against the wall behind me. Beer foam sliding down the paint. I didn't even flinch, just stared at him with mom's eyes. That made him madder. He screamed that I was possessed, that she was inside me, that he should have known. He came at me with his fists raised. I could see his knuckles, scarred from years of punching walls. I stepped aside and he stumbled into the wall, his shoulder hitting hard enough to dent the drywall. He was too hammered to fight properly, too unsteady, too slow. I walked to my room and started packing. Took my time, folded everything neat like mom used to do. Put my clothes in the suitcase she'd hidden in the closet years ago. He stood in the doorway watching, swaying slightly. Didn't say anything, didn't try to stop me. Maybe he was tired too. Maybe he finally understood that this was over. I walked out with my backpack and one suitcase. He was still standing there, one hand braced against the doorframe. I didn't look back. Went straight to Harold's house 6 blocks away. The wheels on the suitcase clicked against every crack in the sidewalk. His parents let me stay the night. His mom made up the couch with sheets that smelled like fabric softener. His dad asked a lot of questions, gentle but thorough, like he was taking a deposition. I showed him some of the recordings. His face got real serious. He excused himself to make some phone calls. The next day, Harold's dad drove me to my aunt's house. She lived in a small apartment on the other side of town, the kind with thin walls and noisy neighbors. She answered the door looking tired, wearing the same robe I remembered from years ago. Said she'd gotten my letter, that she'd been thinking, that she'd been scared but couldn't stop thinking about mom. She let us in, and we talked for hours. Her coffee table was covered with the documents I'd sent. Harold's dad explained about custody laws in his calm lawyer voice, about how my dad had probably forged documents, about how we could file paperwork without involving police if that's what we wanted, about options and timelines and legal strategies. My aunt finally agreed to help, not because she was brave, because she was tired of being scared, tired of carrying the guilt. We started the paperwork that week, nothing dramatic, just forms and filings, trying to get my mom's real name on record, trying to establish that my aunt was my family, trying to create a paper trail that led somewhere safe. My dad must have sensed something was happening. He started calling Harold's house, leaving messages that got increasingly unhinged, threatening to call the cops and say I was kidnapped, threatening to hurt himself, threatening to find us. Harold's dad said to let him. We had evidence, we had recordings, we had documents. Let him explain it all to the police. Let him try to make his version of reality stick when faced with facts. But my dad never called them. He was too smart for that, or too scared. Instead, he started showing up places. Outside my school, sitting in his truck with the engine running, at the grocery store when my aunt was shopping, pretending to read labels while watching her, just watching, just letting us know he was there, making sure we knew he hadn't given up. I kept going to school, kept getting good grades, started seeing a counselor that Harold's dad recommended. She was nice, but I didn't tell her everything. Some things were too hard to say out loud. Some things felt like they'd become real if I spoke them. My aunt tried her best. She wasn't used to having a kid around. Her apartment was small and she worked long hours, but she made me lunch every day. Sometimes just peanut butter sandwiches, but always with a note. Asked about homework, bought me new clothes when she noticed mine were getting too small. Normal stuff that felt weird because it was normal. The legal stuff moved slow. Forms got filed, papers got signed, court dates got scheduled and rescheduled. My aunt officially petitioned to be my guardian. My dad got served papers at the motel where he was staying. He'd lost the house by then, stopped paying the mortgage after he stopped working. The bank foreclosed. Our neighbors said he left in the middle of the night, throwing garbage bags of stuff in his truck. He tried to fight it at first, hired some cheap lawyer who smelled like cigarettes and polyester, but when they saw the evidence, they told him to give up. The recordings were damning. The forged documents were obvious once you looked closely. The birth certificate with my mom's fake name fell apart under scrutiny. His lawyer stopped returning his calls. My aunt got a call one day from the hospital. My dad had a heart attack, survived but barely. They needed next of kin for paperwork. She went because I couldn't, because I was afraid of what I might do or say if I saw him weak and helpless. Found out he'd been living rough, drinking too much, not taking his medication, not eating regular meals. The doctor said his heart was damaged, that he'd need to make major changes if he wanted to survive. When they cleaned out his motel room, they found a will, handwritten on motel stationery, leaving everything to his only love. No name, just that phrase. My aunt brought it to me, holding it like it might explode, asked what I wanted to do with it. I burned it in the sink, watched the edges curl and turn black, watched his words become ash, felt nothing, or felt everything but couldn't separate one feeling from another. The guardianship went through eventually. No big court battle, no dramatic scenes, just paperwork and waiting and more paperwork. My aunt became my legal guardian on a Tuesday afternoon in a small courtroom that smelled like old coffee. I stayed in school, started making friends, real ones this time, people who didn't report back to anyone. Even dated someone briefly though that felt weird and new, and I wasn't very good at it. I saw my dad one more time. It was months later, winter turning to spring. I was walking past this rundown motel on the edge of town and saw him through a window. The curtains were partly open and he was pacing back and forth, talking to someone who wasn't there, his hands moving like he was explaining something important. He looked small, old, broken. His hair was completely gray. His clothes hung loose loose on a frame that used to be powerful. I stood there for a minute watching. Part of me wanted to go in, to yell at him, to make him understand what he did, to demand answers about Mom, to hurt him the way he hurt us, but I didn't. I just walked away. Not because I was scared, because I was done. He had no power over me anymore. He was just a sad old man talking to ghosts in a cheap motel room. My aunt and I moved to a better neighborhood eventually. She got access to some old accounts that were in my mom's real name, money my dad had hidden, money Mom had probably never known existed. We didn't take it all, just enough to start over, to get a 2-bedroom apartment where I had my own space, to buy furniture that didn't smell like beer and sadness. The rest went to charity, some group that helps young mothers escape bad situations. It felt like what Mom would have wanted. I graduated high school with honors, got into a decent college with a partial scholarship. My aunt came to graduation, took too many pictures with her phone, cried when they called my name, embarrassed me by cheering too loud. Normal family stuff that still felt strange but good strange, like wearing new shoes that actually fit. I still have the recordings, still have the notebook. Sometimes I think about throwing them away, but I don't. They're proof it all happened, proof I survived, proof I won, proof that sometimes the monster doesn't win, sometimes the kid gets out, sometimes there's an after. People ask about my parents sometimes. I tell them my mom died when I was young, that my dad isn't in the picture. They usually don't push for more. If they do, I change the subject, talk about classes or movies or anything else. Some stories don't need to be told to everyone. Some stories are mine to keep or share as I choose. My therapist says I'm doing well, processing things, moving forward, building healthy relationships. I believe her mostly. There are still bad days. Days when I hear a door slam and freeze. Days when I smell leather and feel sick. Days when I see a man standing too still and my heart races. But they're getting fewer, getting smaller, getting manageable. I'm in college now studying social work. Want to help kids like me. Kids who think they're trapped, who think no one will believe them, who need someone to show them the way out. My aunt says I'll be good at it, that I understand things other people don't, that I have empathy born from experience. She's probably right. I learned young how to read danger in a room, how to make myself small, how to survive, but I also learned how to fight back, how to be patient, how to win without throwing a punch, how to use the system that's supposed to protect kids to actually protect them. Sometimes I wonder what my mom would think, if she'd be proud, if she'd be sad about how it ended. I think she'd be both. I think she'd understand why I did what I did, why I had to save myself when she couldn't save us both, why I had to be stronger than she could be. I think she'd be glad I got out. I keep one picture of her, the one from her real documents. She looks so young, younger than I am now. Just a kid, really. A kid who got trapped by a monster. A kid who did her best with an impossible situation. A kid who loved me enough to try to hide the worst of it, even when she couldn't hide enough. I don't hate her anymore. Haven't for a long time. She was a victim too. Maybe more than me because she never got out. Never got to see that there was another way. Never got to be anything more than what he made her. Never got to know her real name mattered. Never got to reclaim herself. But I got out. I won. Not with violence or drama. With patience and planning and help from people who cared. With paperwork and persistence. With the simple act of walking away when I was finally able to. With choosing to build instead of destroy. That's the real victory. Not that he lost everything. Not that he ended up alone and broken. But that I didn't. That I built a life. That I found family. That I became more than what he tried to make me. That I chose to be better. To break the cycle. To end the story differently. The story could end there, but life doesn't really end. It just keeps going. I keep going. To class. To therapy. To family dinners with my aunt where we laugh about her terrible cooking and she tries new recipes that never quite work. To coffee with friends who don't know my whole story and don't need to. To volunteer shifts at the shelter where I tell kids it gets better and mean it. I'm okay now. Not perfect. Not healed completely, but okay. And getting better. And that's enough. That's everything, really. Just being okay. Just being free. Just being myself without fear. Without locks on the outside of my door. Without someone watching me sleep. Without reporting my every move to someone who claims love but means control. My dad is still alive as far as I know. Still in that motel probably. Still talking to ghosts. Still believing his version of the story where he's the victim. I don't check on him. Don't want to know. That chapter is closed. This one is mine to write however I want. And I'm writing it carefully, deliberately, one good choice at a time. And I want it to be boring. Wonderfully, normally boring. Full of homework and part-time jobs and stupid jokes with friends. Full of life without violence. Without fear. Without him. Full of small moments that add up to something bigger. Something better. Something mine. That's my revenge. That's my victory. Not his destruction, but my construction. Building something good from the rubble he left behind. Becoming someone my mom would have loved to see. Someone she maybe saw glimpses of in those quiet moments between the storms. Someone who proves that genetics isn't destiny. That patterns can be broken. That kids can survive their parents. I think about her when I help other kids now. When I volunteer at the shelter. When I tell them it gets better. That there's a way out. That they can survive this. I think she'd like that. That her pain led to something good. That her son became someone who helps instead of hurts. That the cycle stopped with me. The notebook is tucked away in a box now. The recordings transferred to a hard drive I barely remember I have. Evidence of a war that's over. Proof of a fight I won by refusing to fight the way he taught me. By refusing to become him. By choosing every day to be different. To be better. To be free. Sometimes new friends ask about the scars. Physical ones and the ones you can't see but somehow people sense. I tell them it's a long story. Sometimes I even tell parts of it. But mostly I just say I had a rough childhood and leave it at that. Because that's what it was. Rough. But it's over now. And I'm here. And I'm okay. And tomorrow I'll be a little more okay. And eventually I'll be more than okay. I'll be good. Happy even. Whole in a way I'm still learning to be. That's the plan anyway. The goal. The life I'm building one normal day at a time. One class. One friend. One laugh at a time. It's working so far. Slow but steady. Like everything worth doing. Like learning to trust. Like learning to love without fear. Like learning to be. My aunt says she's proud of me. Says it all the time actually. It's embarrassing but also nice. To have someone proud. To have someone care. To have family that doesn't hurt. To have someone who sees me as more than an extension of someone else. As myself. As enough. That's what I think about when the memories get bad. Not him in that motel talking to no one. But her in the kitchen burning dinner and laughing about it. Not him with his strap and his rage. But her hugging me after a nightmare and meaning it. Not the family I lost, but the family I found. Not the family family I was born into, but the family I chose and who chose me back. It's enough, more than enough. It's everything. It's life after survival. It's the future I'm writing one day at a time. It's proof that some stories, even the darkest ones, can find their way to light. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how it all actually ended. After I saw my dad at that motel, things got quiet for a while. Too quiet. My aunt kept checking the locks at night. I kept looking over my shoulder walking to class. We were both waiting for something to happen, for him to show up, for another phone call, for the other shoe to drop. Then one day my aunt got a letter from some lawyer, not the cheap one my dad had hired before, someone new. The letter said my dad was contesting the guardianship, said he'd gotten clean, found a job, wanted his son back. My hands shook reading it. My aunt went pale. Harold's dad looked over the paperwork and frowned, said this was different, more professional. Someone was helping my dad, someone who knew what they were doing. We had to respond within 30 days or risk default judgment, risk me going back. I couldn't sleep that night, kept thinking about those locks on my door, about watching my mom get hit, about the leather strap. My aunt found me at 3 a.m. making coffee with shaking hands. She didn't say anything, just sat with me until the sun came up. The lawyer turned out to be this woman named Catherine who specialized in father's rights cases. She painted my dad as a grieving widower who made mistakes, said he deserved a second chance, that keeping a son from his father was cruel. She had statements from his new employer, from his AA sponsor, from his landlord at a new apartment, all saying he was a changed man. Harold's dad worked overtime preparing our response. The recordings helped, but Catherine argued they were taken out of context, said my dad was grieving, that anyone could sound bad if you only recorded their worst moments. She was good, really good. Made me doubt myself even though I lived it. We had to go to court this time. Real court with a judge and everything. I wore the only suit I owned. It was too small in the shoulders. My aunt kept fixing my tie in the hallway. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. My dad showed up looking like a different person. Clean shaven, suit that actually fit, clear eyes. He'd gained weight, looked healthy, looked normal, like someone's dad, not mine. He tried to make eye contact, but I stared at my hands. Catherine went first. Talked about redemption, about second chances, about the sacred bond between father and son. She had photos of the new apartment, a bedroom set up for me, posters of bands I'd never heard of on the walls, like he was trying to create a teenager from a magazine. Then she brought up my mom's real age, said my dad had been young too, made mistakes, that he'd been manipulated by a troubled girl who lied about her age. I wanted to scream. My aunt grabbed my hand under the table, squeezed hard enough to hurt. Harold's dad stayed calm, presented the evidence piece by piece, the forged documents, the recordings, the pattern of abuse, my grades before and after leaving, my therapy records, the difference between who I was then and who I was becoming. Then they called me to testify. The walk to the witness stand felt like miles. My dad watched every step. I could feel his eyes like hands on my back. The judge asked me questions, simple ones at first, my name, my age, where I lived. Then she asked why I didn't want to live with my father. The courtroom got so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. Looked at my aunt, at Harold's dad, at my father, at Catherine with her perfect hair and concerned face. I told them about the toothbrush, how it all started with lying about brushing my teeth, how he punished her instead of me, how I learned to be perfect to protect her, how it didn't matter, how she died because of a mistake, because of a phone call about something I didn't do. My voice got stronger as I talked, told them about the locks, the watching, the recordings, the way he talked about her like property, the way he made me watch him hurt her, the way he blamed her for his violence, the way he blamed me for her death. Catherine tried to interrupt, said I was being coached. The judge shut her down, told me to continue, so I did. Told them about finding out mom's real age, about the aunt I never knew existed, about Vincent and the spying, about everything. My dad's face changed as I talked. The mask slipped, just for a second. I saw the rage underneath. The judge saw it too. Everyone did. Catherine tried to redirect, asked if I'd ever considered that I might be misremembering, that trauma could distort things. I pulled out my phone. Still had one recording I'd never shared, from right after mom died. Him laughing in the hospital hallway, telling someone on the phone that he was finally free, that the problem had solved itself, that now he could start over without her holding him back. The courtroom went silent. My dad's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge said no, asked if my father wanted to respond. He stood up, opened his mouth, closed it, sat back down. The judge made her decision right there. Permanent guardianship to my aunt, restraining order against my father, no contact until I turned 18, and only then if I initiated it. My dad's lawyer tried to argue for supervised visitation. The judge asked if she'd heard the same recording everyone else had. My dad left without looking at me, just walked out with his shoulders straight like none of it mattered. Catherine packed up her briefcase and followed, never apologized, never acknowledged what she'd tried to do, just another case to her. My aunt cried in the car. Happy tears, she said. Relief. Harold's dad said we'd won, but to stay vigilant, that my dad might try again, might not accept the decision, but I knew better. Saw it in his face when he left. He was done. Not because he accepted it, because he'd been exposed, because the game was over. We went for ice cream after. Stupid celebration, but it felt right. Normal, like what normal families do after court. My aunt got chocolate. I got vanilla. We sat in the car eating and not talking about what just happened, just being family. That was 2 years ago. I'm in college now, studying social work, like I said, living in dorms, which my aunt hated but let me do. Normal college kid stuff. Parties I don't really enjoy. Classes I mostly like. Friends who know nothing about any of this. My dad never tried to contact me again. I heard from someone that he moved states, started over somewhere new, probably telling some other story about his ungrateful son who abandoned him. I don't care. He's not my problem anymore. I still have nightmares sometimes. Wake up thinking I'm 7 again, that I need to check my toothbrush, that I need to be perfect, that someone's watching, but they're getting less frequent. Therapy helps. Time helps. Distance helps. My aunt and I text every day. She sends me memes she doesn't understand. I pretend they're funny. She visits once a month and takes me grocery shopping. Buys too much food. Worries I'm not eating enough. Normal aunt stuff that still feels weird, but good weird. I volunteer at a shelter on weekends. Tell kids my age that it gets better, that there's help, that they can survive. Some believe me, some don't. I give them my email. Tell them to reach out if they need to. Some do. We talk about exit plans, about safety, about hope. One kid, Philip, reminds me of myself. Quiet, watchful, too careful with his words. He asked me once how I got out. I told him the simple version, that I recorded everything, that I found family who helped, that I walked away when I could, that I didn't give up. He emails me updates sometimes. Still at home but documenting everything, building his case, planning his exit. I tell him to be careful, to be patient, that freedom is worth waiting for, that surviving is the best revenge. I think that's what I want people to know. Not the details of what happened, not the horror of it, but that you can survive, that you can build something better, that you can walk away and not look back, that you can win by refusing to play their game. My story isn't special. Thousands of kids live this every day. Some make it out, some don't. I was lucky. Had an aunt who finally chose courage, had a friend whose dad knew law, had evidence, had timing, had a judge who listened. But mostly I had stubbornness, refused to break the way he wanted, refused to become him, refused to accept that this was all there was, refused to let him win. That's all any of us have, really. The choice to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep hoping. So that's it. That's my story. Guy asked for the full version and now you have it. Not sure why I typed it all out. Maybe because Philip asked. Maybe because it's been long enough that I can. Maybe because someone needs to hear it. If that's you, if you're reading this from some house where you're not safe, know this. It ends. You get out. You survive. You build something better. You become someone they never thought you could be. You win. Not with violence, not with revenge, but by living. By choosing every day to be better than what they taught you. By proving that cycles can break, that kids can outlive their parents' damage, that there's life after survival. I'm proof. Living boring, wonderful proof. Studying for exams, eating cafeteria food, making friends, going to therapy, calling my aunt, living my small normal life that feels like the biggest victory in the world. Because it is. Because I'm here. Because I made it. Because every normal day is a day he doesn't control. Every choice I make is mine. Every moment I'm free is a moment I won. That's enough. That's everything. That's the whole story.